This podcast is intended for mature audiences, so grow up. I'm Leslie, and I tell stories, but these aren't just any stories. These are my stories, untold until now. I'm a Gen Xer who's lived through it all. The analog days, the digital dawn, and everything in between. I'm turning the mic on myself to share these true stories, awkward moments, and the maybe you had to be there experiences that shaped who I am. From the suburban battlefields of being a childhood nobody to the existential angst of adulthood, I'm taking you on a journey through the events, the people, and the pop culture that defined my experience. This is Gen X Crossing. We're going to divert from my work series, which I can do for two reasons. One, it's my podcast, and two, there's only a couple of us that listen to it, so you know what? We'll get back to it. Also, this episode is a bit shorter, so I hope you enjoy that little change. This is episode 7, Free to Be You and Me. And also, it's your turn to do the dishes. Let me take you to 1973-74. I and my best friend Charla were going to Mountain View Elementary School, a dinky little school just outside of Denver. Our moms took turns taking us to kindergarten for the first part of the year. That was fall of 72. Second semester, once we learned Stop, Look, and Listen, which back then was a song about crossing the street. Stop, look, and listen. We were allowed to walk home by ourselves after class. It was a half day back then. At 5 years old, when class was dismissed, Charlotte and I would walk down the alley between Fenton and Eaton Streets, then hang a right on 41st Avenue, walk to the light at 41st and Harlan. Never, ever, ever did we cross the light when it wasn't a walk light, even if there were no cars coming. Once we did get the walk light, Charlotte would go left on Harlan Street, past the red brick apartments and the empty lot. Then she would hang a right on 40th. Her house was the third one from the lot with a beautiful weeping willow in the front yard and a helping hand sign in the window of their rec room. I have to do a sidebar. Indulge me. I want to tell you what a helping hand sign was. It was an off-white placard that was like 12 by 17 inches or something. It was huge, with the shape of a hand in a black silhouette. They were in the windows of moms who almost always were home and could be a safe person to go to if you were being chased by bullies or some weirdo trying to lure you into his car. Charla's mom had one in her window, but my mom didn't. She was in and out all day when we were at school and eventually went back to work full-time after I started first grade. So she really didn't want to do it. Anywho, I would continue on 41st Avenue to my house about 4 houses down. Once we knew how to walk home, we were expected to walk the half-mile to school and back, starting in first grade. Yes, we were 6 years old. I think our parents figured a few things. 1, they had taught us about looking left, right, and then left again before we ever crossed the road. Told us we had to cross where there was a light. And they had us practicing walking home those kindergarten afternoons. 2, we had each other. I feel like there was some logic back then around kidnappers avoiding us if we were together because one of us could run off and tell. Like if I got nabbed, Charlotte could run home and tell her mom. The whole safety in numbers thing, I guess. 3, related to that, we were taught not to talk to strangers, period. I remember when we were little, just before kindergarten, Charlotte and I were playing in my front yard, kind of close to the sidewalk, and this beat-up blue sedan pulled up next to us. He started saying something in a low voice, which we started moving in closer to hear, and right then, my mom was looking out the door checking on us. She threw open the wood screen door and hollered at us, "Get away from that car!" He tore off, and we ran, leapt up the stairs to the safety of our porch. "He was just asking us a question," I said, out of breath and feeling bad for the probably bad guy. "Strangers don't have any reason to ask children questions," was her brilliant reply. So we were clear on that danger or potential danger and what it felt like by the time we started first grade. We also knew not to deviate from our route there and home. It was faster if we would have cut through Randall Park, but someone's mom said that a flasher had been seen there, so that was strictly forbidden. My mom taught me how to make my own lunch just before first grade started. She had me pull a chair up to the counter so that I could reach it, just like when I did the dishes. I'll get to that later. Then she asked me what my favorite sandwich was, because that would be easier to do every day, although I think she already knew. It was usually bologna, and usually with ketchup, believe it or not. My palate was not quite ready for the Food Club brand processed and pressed chicken and beef lunch meat, mustard, mayo, and cheese my sibs all had in their lunches. Also, school lunch was a once or twice a month thing. It was a real treat to get school lunch. Another thing while I'm deviating, as long as you had a note from your mom and lived close enough to the school, you could go home for lunch. So in first grade, on the days that I had a note to go home for lunch, I would walk by myself from school to home, make myself lunch, eat, and walk back to school. Let me tell you, it was so hard to be motivated to go back to school after lunch. I was such a little homebody. Anyway, we walked through the whole thing together when she showed me how to make my lunch, including how to fold the sandwich bag so that it was tucked in and no ketchup would leak out. Ziploc sandwich bags had been invented by then, but were something of a luxury. No one in our neighborhood had them, yet anyway. So what if a chip or two spilled out of the bag and bounced around our lunchbox? We still ate it. In our kitchen, we had a large, deep drawer that held our breakfast cereals. Right above that, over the counter, was where my mom kept potato chips, crackers, cookies, etc. I was supposed to use a chair to reach them. But after that first day on the chair, I would just pull the cereal drawer partially out and use that as a stepladder so that I could stand on the counter to reach the chips and stuff. This would especially infuriate my dad, so I was careful to bring the chair over when one of them was home. So, following my training on making my own lunch, the routine in the fall of 1973 was this. Wake myself up, no alarm clock. I was a morning kid anyway, so that one was easy. Get dressed, make myself a bowl of cereal, pack my lunch, sandwich, chips, 2 chocolate chip cookies, a can of pudding with a spoon from home, and an apple or usually an orange. After that, I was to get a nickel out of my mom's change purse for milk money, and then watch the Noel and Andy show until the big hand on the clock in our kitchen was on the 4 and the little hand was on the 8, so 8:20. If I stayed until the credits to the Noel and Andy show, I would be tardy. I guess this is like a high sidebar episode, so indulge me a minute. Because when you look online to find out about Noel and Andy, you don't find a hell of a lot, so I want to tell you about this. It was a local puppet show. Noel was Noel Custer, a really nice lady, who reminded me of the secretary at our doctor's office, and Andy was a puppet, a handmade dragon. It was on from 8 to 8:30 on school days in Denver and had a nice mix of cartoons, crafts, learning, and just playing around. I hated when it was over each day. It was like a comforter that I wrapped around my little brain first thing in the morning. I could feel it getting later as Noel and Andy show progressed. I took my cues from whatever segment the show was on. It's so weird to think about it now, sensing time. I really didn't have to look at the clock because I knew intuitively when it was going to be close to time to leave. Also, I had a great backup. Charla's mom would send her at the appointed time, through their backyard, over the little wood fence that connected the corners of our backyards, and if for some reason I lost track of time, she was my backup clock. Okay, silly and apropos of nothing, I want to mention, if my mother did not have exactly a nickel, it was expected that I bring home whatever change the lunch lady gave me, like if it was a quarter, for example, and I would put it back in my mom's purse after school, honest to God. At that age, I had yet to learn to tell time or understand what money was worth, but my mom taught me the difference between a nickel, a dime, and a quarter. I knew 5 was bigger than 10, and 25 was bigger than both of them. So it worked every time. Now, you may be wondering at this point where everyone else in my family was. My dad was already eating his own breakfast in the kitchen. He had his own granola that he kept out of reach, out of sight, that no one was allowed to touch. He would put honey on it every morning, put it in a big bowl and eat it, and then he would just leave for his job. He was a local trucker with Yellow Freight, so he had to go pretty early. My mom worked evenings, part-time at Lutheran Hospital, as a telephone operator, so she was still in bed. She did check on me the first few days as I was getting ready, but for the most part, she wasn't up when I left for school. I was the youngest, and my older sibs had their own routines that didn't involve helping me get ready for school. And once I got to school, once every kid got to school, we didn't hear from our moms at all, unless we had like a dentist appointment or something. None of the dads in our neighborhood picked kids up or were home when they got home from school. Just the way that it was. I think I would have thought my mom was dead if my dad ever showed up at my school during the day. They did both come to school programs, but back then, kids usually walked there to be early, and then their parents drove them back home afterward. And yes, that includes in the winter. Sorry, I had to go there. We did walk in the snow at night. Anyway, when the school day was over, we made our way back home. But we didn't have backpacks and book bags back then. Besides a math worksheet or writing practice, the only thing we usually had to bring home was our lunch boxes or the occasional art project. So we had less to keep up with overall, I think, than kids these days. Homework could wait until after supper, so I'd come in, dump my papers and my lunchbox on my bed, bottom bunk of the bunk beds my sister and I shared, and I'd head outside. My mom would be making dinner before she left for work, and man, our kitchen always smelled so good after school. I could tell coming down the sidewalk and up the stairs to our porch what it was going to be. Chili, spaghetti, squash casserole, or her famous concoction. Green beans, onions, potatoes, and cubed Spam, made in the pressure cooker with just salt and pepper and a little water. My God, we fought over that Spam. We weren't allowed to eat until 5 p.m., so a few cookies would have to tide us over while we were being tortured by that smell. My mom also made the best homemade goodies, but that was generally on weekends. There was a gap between the time Mom left for work and Dad got home, so during that time, my older twin sisters were in charge, which really meant running interference in the kitchen for the hour and 20 minutes or so after she left and dinner. She didn't want us picking in the pot of whatever she had cooked up for us. Of course, the two of them, my sisters, had little cupfuls hiding in their room to nosh on. Sisters. I probably would have done the same thing too. No one had to call us in for dinner. We were good and hungry by 5. Our stomachs had good clocks. Before she would leave, my mom would set aside a big bowl of whatever was for dinner for my dad in the fridge, because by the time he got home, there wouldn't be anything left for him if she didn't. We were eating machines. We did not have a microwave, so he would have to heat it up on the stove when he got home, 6:30-ish. After dinner, each of us had a dish night. We didn't get a dishwasher until I was in 5th grade. When we did, it was portable, this mammoth appliance from the 60s that had a water hookup for the sink, but that's a story for another day. So, dish night. My night was Tuesdays. I remember that because that's when Happy Days came on the air, and I wanted to get them done before it started. So, there I was, 6 years old, dragging the chair across our linoleum, sleeves rolled up, one side of the sink plugged and filled with Palmolive. You're soaking in it. What? Relax, it's Palmolive. Softens hands while you're doing the dishes. Sorry, I'm not having a stroke. That's stuck in my head. My mom taught me how to do the dishes as well. Scrub thoroughly with a dish rag in the soapy water. Rinse well. These things were very important. Rinse well, and then hang on the rack to dry, and then dry them with a dish towel when you're all done and put them away. Thems were the rules. However, of the 5 of us kids, 2 would leave them on the rack after they washed them and just never put them away, and the other 2 would usually ignore the dishes on their day entirely. Oh, I forgot! I won't name names, but I was not one of them. What sucked was the next day, whoever's day it was, they had to finish up whatever the person before them didn't. My parents refused to police this weekday task. My mom did the dishes on the weekend, so I can't blame her. And my dad, well, let's just say the roles were traditional, except that my mom did everything in the house and worked outside of the house. Oh, anywho, I actually found doing the dishes relaxing. No one bothered me because no one else wanted to do them. I could sing to myself. I could take my time. The task was finite, and I could see the results of my work. So I would often do the dishes of a sibling on their night or go back in the kitchen and dry the ones draining on the rack, move the chair to the cabinets, and put away the glasses, silverware, and plates. I think the mess got on my nerves. This is not some retro flex. It's just the way my little mind worked. And I think my sibs enjoyed taking full advantage of that. So I guess it was the 70s version of a win-win. I don't know. It was the same for other housework, really. I could do extra jobs around the house because I wanted to see it done. And believe me, I would ask for a reassignment if one of my jobs around the house got to be too much. Like when it was my responsibility to take the clothes from everyone's floors in their bedroom and deliver them to the foot of the washer downstairs. We did not have a hamper. I'm not even sure we had laundry baskets because it was just a perpetual flow. So I quit that job. I was also tasked one time with matching socks from the mammoth pile of clothes, always piled on the repurposed dinette table in our basement. Screw that. But I loved vacuuming, dusting, and eventually learning how to scour the tub, toilet, sink, clean the mirrors, which is one of the reasons why I remember so vividly when Free to Be You and Me came out. Free to Be You and Me was a media project conceived of and in part starring Marlo Thomas of That Girl fame. It encouraged equality, individuality, and what we used to call tolerance. There were songs and stories, even a puppet show. I became familiar with it when we had a substitute teacher in my first grade classroom who played the record for us. I loved it. But there was this poem recited by Carol Channing, and my God, if you tell me you don't know who these people are, I swear, please, look up Carol Channing, look up Marlo Thomas, preferably on YouTube, where you can hear and see them in action. I cannot adequately describe their genius and talent. Sorry, I got upset a minute. Anywho, in her very distinctive voice and cadence, Carol Channing performed this cool thing about housework, the primary theme of which was no one likes it, but it has to be done, so everyone should work together and do it. I appreciate now so much the work that this project did and how it moved the needle ever so slightly on ideas like girls can be more than just moms and teachers, and it's okay for boys to cry or want to play with a doll. But I liked helping around the house because I enjoyed seeing it clean. Not everybody hates cleaning, I thought, and I realized then that that made me special, not because I was a girl, but because I actually liked it. There was such a wonderful nuance to be had back then. And although sometimes I felt a little sad to see my handmade lunch compared to kids whose moms made theirs, or a bit embarrassed that my hair was still sticking up from getting out of bed because I didn't bother to wet it down and comb it, the fact was, I was capable of those things. And I knew it at age 6. Not wanting to do it was not the same as I can't do it. Thank you for listening. There are so many more stories to come. Some will crack you up. Some might be sad. Others are just little narratives, stories. All of them really happened. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, it would mean a lot to me if you take the time to like and subscribe. Until next time, peace out.